We don't serve people like you here. You're wearing a hoodie in a bank. What do you expect? The whisper was just loud enough for Elijah Cole to hear as he stood at the customer service desk of First Capital Bank, his withdrawal request hanging in the air between him and the increasingly hostile branch manager. Sir, people who make legitimate large withdrawals don't typically dress like this. Victoria Harlow's eyes flicked dismissively over Elijah's black hoodie and face cap, her voice dripping with condescension. Perhaps you're confused about the amount in your account? The security guard inched closer, hand resting on his belt, eyes fixed on Elijah as though his dark skin and casual clothes had triggered some silent alarm. I've provided 2 forms of ID, Elijah said quietly, keeping his composure even as other customers began to stare. The account number is correct. The signature matches. Is there another issue I should be aware of? Victoria leaned forward, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Let's be honest. Someone who looks like you requesting $25,000 in cash? You understand why we have concerns. The blatant prejudice hung in the air for 3 excruciating seconds before Elijah's phone buzzed. He answered it calmly, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. Yes, I'm at the Westlake branch now. I see. Yes, she's right here. When he ended the call, something had changed in his demeanor. The subtle shift from patience to power was almost imperceptible, but Victoria sensed it immediately. Elijah smiled, because the game had just been changed. What Victoria, the bank manager, didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that 7 minutes later, she would be cleaning out her desk, her career permanently over. If you've ever been judged, dismissed, or discriminated against based on your appearance, this is the most satisfying story of karma and justice served so poor for. Hit that subscribe button right now, type justice, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Earlier that morning, Elijah Cole had been sitting in his corner office overlooking the city skyline. First Capital Bank, his latest acquisition, had been struggling with customer satisfaction scores. Something wasn't adding up. I need to see it for myself, he told his executive assistant. Cancel my meetings. I'm going undercover. 20 minutes later, Elijah Cole, CEO of Cole Financial Group and owner of First Capital Bank, had transformed. The tailored suit was replaced with a black hoodie and jeans, his luxury watch tucked away, and to complete the transformation, a simple black cap pulled low over his eyes. As Elijah walked into the branch, he immediately felt the weight of eyes on him. The security guard straightened, tracking his movement. 2 elderly customers clutched their purses a little tighter. He approached the first available teller, a young woman named Jessica. Good morning, Elijah said pleasantly. I'd like to make a withdrawal, please. Jessica's eyes darted to his hoodie, then to his cap, then back to her screen. Do you have an account with us, sir? The slight emphasis on sir wasn't lost on Elijah. Yes, I do. He slid his debit card and driver's license across the counter. I'd like to withdraw $25,000 for a community project I'm working on. Jessica stared at the screen, then at his ID, then back at the screen. The amount in the account clearly surprised her. One moment, please, she said, picking up her phone. I'll need to get approval for a withdrawal of this size. Within 30 seconds, Victoria Harlow, the bank manager, approached, her heels clicking aggressively across the marble floor. Everything about her, from her perfectly styled blonde hair to her immaculate navy blue suit, screamed authority. Good morning, sir. I'm Victoria Harlow, the branch manager. I understand you're requesting a significant withdrawal? Elijah nodded. Yes, $25,000. It's for a community center renovation in East Side. I see. And this money is yours? The emphasis on yours made Elijah's jaw tighten. Yes, it's my account. I've provided identification. Victoria picked up his license, studying it with exaggerated care while occasionally glancing at his hoodie. Mr. Cole, withdrawals over $10,000 require additional verification. It's bank policy. Also, we typically request advance notice for large cash withdrawals. I understand the policy, Miss Harlow. I'm happy to complete any necessary paperwork. As for advance notice, your website clearly states that branches maintain sufficient funds for withdrawals up to $50,000 without prior notification. Victoria's smile tightened. She clearly hadn't expected him to know bank policies. Well, yes, technically, but we still need to verify that you are who you claim to be and that these funds were obtained legitimately. There it was. The implication hung in the air between them. How could someone dressed like him have legitimate access to $25,000? I've provided my identification, Elijah said calmly. Is there something specific about my appearance today that's causing concern? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Sir, someone walking in off the street dressed in casual attire, requesting a large cash withdrawal, raises certain security flags. Behind him, Elijah could feel the stares of other customers. Some were openly watching the confrontation. Others were deliberately avoiding eye contact, finding sudden interest in their deposit slips or phones. So if I had come in wearing a suit and tie, would we still be having this conversation? Elijah asked. Victoria's professional veneer cracked slightly. Sir, your tone is becoming inappropriate. Perhaps you'd like to schedule an appointment to return another day. With proper documentation, Elijah reached into his pocket and pulled out his passport. I believe this constitutes proper documentation under federal banking regulations. Victoria took the passport but barely glanced at it. Her mind was made up. Mr. Cole, if that is indeed your name, I'm going to need to ask some additional questions about the source of these funds. We have an obligation to report suspicious transactions. The words suspicious transactions were spoken just loudly enough for nearby customers to hear. The security guard moved a few steps nearer. Miss Harlow, Elijah said, his patience wearing thin, are you suggesting that my withdrawal request is suspicious solely because of how I'm dressed today, or is there another factor influencing your judgment? Victoria's cheeks flushed slightly. I'm simply following protocol, sir. Is it protocol to question the legitimacy of funds despite valid identification? Is it protocol to make customers feel unwelcome based on their appearance? The branch had grown uncomfortably quiet. Even the tellers had stopped their activities to watch. Sir, if you continue with this attitude, I'll have to ask you to leave. Victoria glanced at the security guard, who took another step forward. Elijah stood perfectly still, his gaze steady. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Victoria's smile returned, this time with a hint of triumph. I am the branch manager, sir. There is no supervisor present today. And that's when Elijah made the phone call that would change everything. The call that would expose not just Victoria's prejudice, but a pattern of discrimination that had been festering within the branch for months. If you believe Elijah was judged unfairly based on his appearance, drop a comment below. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button right now. What happens next is something you don't want to miss. Elijah reached into his pocket and pulled out yet another form of identification, his platinum credit card. Perhaps this will help verify my identity, Miss Harlow, he said calmly, sliding the card across the counter. Victoria glanced at the card, then pushed it back toward him with a tight smile. Mr. Cole, the issue isn't just identification. Banking is a professional environment. Your current attire is inappropriate for conducting significant financial transactions. Our high-value clients expect a certain atmosphere of professionalism and security. Elijah absorbed the irony of her words. The same reasoning, different decade, different bank, same discrimination. Is there a dress code posted for customers that I missed on my way in? He asked. It's not about a posted code, Victoria said, her voice dripping with condescension. It's about common sense. Walking into a financial institution dressed like... She gestured vaguely at his hoodie. Well, It raises questions about the legitimacy of your business. In that moment, Elijah made a decision. He wouldn't reveal his identity just yet. He wanted to see exactly how far Victoria would go, how deep the discrimination ran in this branch he owned. Was she an outlier, or was this symptomatic of a larger problem? "Miss Harlow," he said with remarkable composure, "I'd like you to be very specific about why you're denying me service today. Is it my identification which matches your records? Is it the funds which are legitimately in my account? Or is it simply that I don't look the part of someone who should have access to $25,000? Victoria's expression flickered between discomfort and indignation. She was being called out directly now, and her response would reveal everything Elijah needed to know about the culture he needed to change. Victoria Harlow's professional mask was slipping with each passing moment. Her polite customer service smile had transformed into something harder, more defensive. Elijah's direct question had backed her into a corner, and now she was about to show her true colors. "Mr. Cole," she said, emphasizing his name with subtle skepticism, "I think there may be some confusion about your account status. People sometimes misunderstand the difference between available balance and pending transactions." The implication was crystal clear. Someone dressed like him, and with his skin color, couldn't possibly have legitimate access to the funds he was claiming. It was financial discrimination disguised as helpful customer service. "I assure you, Miss Harlow, I understand banking concepts quite well," Elijah replied evenly. "There's no confusion on my part." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. This wasn't going according to her script. Customers like Elijah, at least customers who looked like Elijah in his hoodie and cap, were supposed to back down when confronted with banking terminology and authority. "Perhaps we should check if there's a hold on your account," she suggested, her tone becoming increasingly patronizing. Large deposits sometimes trigger automatic security protocols. As Victoria spoke, Elijah noticed the security guard had moved closer. The man was trying to appear casual, but his attention was firmly fixed on Elijah's hoodie, as if the black fabric itself might conceal some threat. He positioned himself just behind Elijah's right shoulder, close enough to intervene, far enough to maintain the illusion that this wasn't targeted surveillance. Other customers were now openly staring. An elderly couple had paused their transaction to watch. A woman in a business suit clutched her handbag tighter. The entire bank lobby had become a silent theater of bias, with Elijah cast as the suspicious character simply because of his appearance. "Miss Harlow," Elijah said, his voice calm but firm, "I'd like to speak with the branch manager privately." A flicker of triumph crossed Victoria's face. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the chance to demonstrate her authority. "I am the branch manager, Mr. Cole," she announced, standing taller. "I've been managing this location for 3 years, and I know our security protocols intimately." Then came the kicker. The statement that would ultimately cost her career. "If you'd like to make this transaction, I suggest you return tomorrow, properly dressed for a banking environment. Perhaps in attire more befitting someone conducting legitimate business." The word legitimate hung in the air between them. A verbal slap across the face. The security guard took another step closer, his hand now resting on his belt. Not quite touching his weapon, but making its presence known. Elijah looked from Victoria to the guard, then back to Victoria. He had seen enough. 20 years of building his financial empire, of working to change the system from within, and still, a black man in casual clothes couldn't withdraw his own money without being treated like a criminal. Without a word, Elijah took out his phone. Victoria's posture relaxed slightly. She assumed he was admitting defeat, preparing to leave. Instead, he dialed a number from memory, the direct line to his executive office. "Sarah, it's Elijah," he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. I need you to connect me with Thomas Reynolds immediately." Reynolds was the regional director who oversaw all branches in the state. Victoria's expression didn't change. The name meant nothing to her yet. "Tom," Elijah continued after a brief pause, his voice shifting subtly into the commanding tone he used in board meetings. "I'm currently at the Westlake branch conducting an unannounced service audit. Please come to the branch immediately and bring the last 3 months of customer complaint records with you." He paused, listening. "Yes, particularly complaints regarding denial of service. And Tom? No phone calls ahead? I want this to be completely transparent." Victoria's face had drained of color. The security guard had taken a step back, uncertainty replacing his previous vigilance. Elijah ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The dynamic in the room had shifted, though Victoria didn't yet understand exactly how. "Mr. Cole," she began, her voice less certain now, "I don't know who you were speaking with, but our regional management team doesn't conduct business that way. If you have a complaint, there's a formal process." "Miss Harlow," Elijah interrupted quietly, "in approximately 7 minutes, your regional director will walk through that door. Before he arrives, I suggest you reconsider whether my hoodie is really the problem here, or if there's a more systemic issue at play." He gestured to the security camera mounted in the corner. "Every word of our interaction has been recorded. Every assumption you've made about me based on my appearance, every policy you've selectively enforced." Victoria's professional composure cracked completely. "Are you threatening me?" "No, Miss Harlow, I'm educating you." The security guard had now backed away completely, sensing the shifting power dynamic but not yet understanding it. Customers continued to watch, the tension in the air palpable. No one knew exactly what was happening, but everyone sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. In just a few minutes, Victoria Harlow would learn the true cost of judging a book by its cover. And First Capital Bank would never be the same. The lobby of First Capital Bank had fallen into an uncomfortable silence. Victoria Harlow stood behind her desk, her expression frozen somewhere between defiance and dawning uncertainty. The security guard had retreated to his post by the door, suddenly finding the floor tiles fascinating. Customers remained transfixed, sensing they were witnessing something significant. Elijah Cole stood calmly in the center of it all. A man in a hoodie who had just made a phone call that seemed to have shifted the earth beneath Victoria's feet. As the minutes ticked by, Elijah reached up slowly and removed his cap. Without the shadow cast by the brim, his face was fully visible for the first time. Strong features, intelligent eyes, and an expression of composed authority that changed the energy in the room instantly. "Miss Harlow," he said quietly, reaching into his hoodie pocket, "I believe it's time we properly introduced ourselves." He withdrew not another form of ID, but a distinctive platinum card emblazoned with the First Capital Bank executive logo. It was the access card carried only by the highest-ranking officials in the company, a card Victoria had seen only in orientation videos. He placed it on the counter between them. "My name is Elijah Cole. I'm the CEO of Cole Financial Group and the owner of First Capital Bank, including this branch." Victoria's face went through a remarkable transformation: shock, disbelief, and then the sickening realization that everything she had said and done in the past 20 minutes had been witnessed by her ultimate boss. "Mr. Cole," she stammered, her voice suddenly higher, her posture completely changed. "I had no idea. I mean, we weren't expecting. If I had known who you were." "That's precisely the problem, isn't it?" Elijah replied, his voice still calm, but now carrying an unmistakable weight of authority. "The fact that you would treat any customer differently based on who you thought they were or how they were dressed." The front doors of the bank swung open, and Thomas Reynolds, the regional director, burst in. His normally composed demeanor was rattled. his tie slightly askew from what had clearly been a rushed journey. His eyes swept the lobby until they found Elijah, and the recognition was immediate. "Mr. Cole," he said, hurrying over. "I came as quickly as I could." Victoria's eyes widened further, the final confirmation that this was indeed happening. "Thank you, Tom," Elijah said. "I've been conducting an unannounced service audit at this branch, and I've encountered some concerning issues regarding customer treatment." Victoria found her voice again, desperation now evident in every word. "Mr. Cole, if I could just explain, we have very specific security protocols for high-value transactions. Certain types of attire can trigger additional verification requirements. It's all about protecting our customers in the bank." "Is that written in our policy manual?" Elijah asked, knowing full well it wasn't. "Well, not explicitly, but it's an understood security measure," Victoria continued, her words tumbling out faster now. "Individuals in certain attire, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, they statistically present higher risk factors. It's simply best practice in the banking industry." Thomas Reynolds looked horrified. As regional director, he knew exactly what was and wasn't in the policy manuals. "Miss Harlow," Elijah said, "I'd like to review the security footage of our interaction today. Tom, could you please arrange that immediately?" "Of course, sir," Reynolds replied, gesturing to the security office. As they prepared to move toward the back of the bank, Elijah paused and looked back at Victoria. "I'd like you to join us for this review, Miss Harlow." The video was damning. With the sound on, every dismissive comment, every unfounded implication about legitimate transactions, every biased assumption was captured in high definition. Victoria sat rigid in her chair, watching her career implode on the screen before her. Thomas Reynolds looked physically ill. "Stop the video, please," Elijah said as it reached the point where he'd made his phone call. He turned to Victoria. "Miss Harlow, when I purchased this bank 2 years ago, I made a commitment to building a financial institution that served all customers with dignity and respect. I introduced policies ensuring equal treatment regardless of appearance, explicit training on unconscious bias, and systems to track service disparities." He gestured to the screen. "Yet here we are, watching as you systematically violated every one of those principles. Not because you lacked training, but because you chose to judge me based on my appearance, rather than my credentials." "Mr. Cole, please," Victoria began, desperation in her voice. "This was an isolated incident. I've been under tremendous pressure with the quarterly audits, and security has been emphasized repeatedly in our regional meetings." "Let's test that theory," Elijah replied. He turned to Reynolds. "Tom, pull up the customer complaint records for this branch for the past 3 months. Filter for any mentions of discrimination or unfair treatment." Reynolds tapped at the computer, and within moments, a troubling pattern emerged. 7 formal complaints alleging discriminatory treatment, all filed by customers of color or those from lower-income neighborhoods. All of them handled by Victoria. All of them dismissed as misunderstandings or necessary security protocols. Elijah studied the data, then looked back at Victoria. "This doesn't appear to be isolated at all, Miss Harlow. This appears to be a pattern." The systematic nature of the discrimination was exactly what Elijah had committed to eliminating when he purchased First Capital Bank. His mission hadn't just been to add another financial institution to his portfolio. It had been to transform banking for the communities that needed it most. The regional management team sat in uncomfortable silence around the conference table of the branch manager's office. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that Elijah Cole, still in his black hoodie, now occupied the executive chair at the head of the table, while Victoria Harlow sat rigidly in a visitor's chair, her perfect posture now a defense mechanism rather than a display of authority. Thomas Reynolds had been joined by the district operations manager and the head of human resources, both of whom had arrived breathless and wide-eyed after receiving urgent calls. The atmosphere was tense, the air heavy with the weight of what they'd all just witnessed in the security footage. Elijah placed a tablet on the table, displaying the First Capital Bank policy manual. He hadn't removed his hoodie, a deliberate choice that made Victoria's earlier comments about appropriate attire echo uncomfortably in the room. Section 3.1 of our customer service standards, Elijah began, his voice measured and clear. Can someone read it aloud, please? Reynolds cleared his throat and read. First Capital Bank is committed to providing exceptional service to all customers, regardless of appearance, background, or transaction size. Our core values prioritize dignity, respect, and equality in every interaction. Thank you, Elijah said, swiping to the next page. And our verification protocols for large withdrawals? The operations manager spoke up. 2 forms of valid government ID are required for transactions over $10,000, along with standard CTR filing. Additional verification is solely based on regulatory requirements, not subjective assessments of the customer. Elijah nodded and set the tablet down. Now let's discuss what happened today, and more importantly, what's been happening at this branch for some time. He pulled up a dashboard showing customer satisfaction metrics, complaint records, and service ratings, all broken down by demographics. The data told a disturbing story. Customers of color and those from lower-income neighborhoods consistently reported negative experiences at this particular branch. This isn't about one incident, Elijah stated. This is about a pattern of behavior that violates everything this bank should stand for. Victoria leaned forward, her last desperate attempt at professional salvation. Mr. Cole, if I could explain. Banking security requires a certain level of discretion. Statistical patterns in fraud cases show. Miss Harlow, Elijah interrupted, I'm intimately familiar with banking security protocols. I wrote many of the ones we use at this institution. What you demonstrated today wasn't security protocol. It was prejudice. He turned to the tablet again, now displaying side-by-side security footage clips. These are 8 different customers from the past month. 4 in business attire, 4 in casual clothes. The difference in treatment is stark. The footage was damning, customers in suits receiving smiles and expedited service, while those in casual clothes, particularly minorities, faced additional scrutiny, delays, and often overt suspicion. The data doesn't lie, Elijah continued. When controlling for transaction type and amount, customers in casual attire at this branch wait an average of 12 minutes longer for service. If they're also minorities, that extends to 19 minutes. This isn't coincidence or security. It's bias institutionalized under your leadership, Miss Harlow. Victoria's attempt to respond faltered as Elijah held up his hand. I didn't build this company, didn't acquire this bank to perpetuate the same discriminatory practices I faced as a young entrepreneur. Every person who walks through our doors deserves equal treatment, equal respect, and equal access to their own money. He turned to the HR director. Miss Harlow's employment is terminated, effective immediately. Victoria gasped. You can't just, I can and I have, Elijah stated firmly. Banking is built on trust. Our customers need to trust us, and I need to trust those who represent this institution. That trust has been irrevocably broken. Victoria was escorted to clear out her desk, her career at First Capital Bank over in less time than she'd spent trying to deny Elijah his withdrawal. In the lobby, Elijah addressed the remaining staff, still in his hoodie, still the same person who'd been treated with suspicion just an hour earlier. Today marks a turning point for this branch, he announced. Beginning next week, every employee will undergo enhanced bias training. We'll be implementing new service metrics that track equitable treatment. And most importantly, we're launching a community banking initiative specifically focused on providing financial services to underserved neighborhoods. He paused, looking at each employee individually. Judge customers by the content of their accounts, not the clothes on their backs. That's not just a moral imperative. As of today, it's your job description. Later that afternoon, Elijah personally completed his withdrawal, the same transaction that Victoria had refused him. Still wearing his hoodie, still the same person, but now treated with the deference reserved for the CEO. As the teller counted out the $25,000, Elijah noticed her hands trembling slightly. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Jessica, sir," she replied nervously. "Jessica, I'm not here to punish people. I'm here to fix a system. We all have biases. The key is recognizing them and working to overcome them." She nodded, visibly relieved. "This money is for the East Side Education Center's computer lab," Elijah explained. "Would you like to come with me to deliver it? See firsthand the impact banking can have when we serve all communities equally." An hour later, Elijah stood in the community center surrounded by excited children marveling at the prospect of new computers. The director couldn't believe their grant application had been approved so quickly and delivered by the CEO himself, dressed in a hoodie no different from what many of the kids were wearing. "Why did you do it this way?" the center director asked quietly. "You could have just sent a check." Elijah watched the children, seeing in them reflections of his younger self. Because dignity isn't just about giving people money. It's about showing them respect regardless of what they wear, where they live, or how they look. He turned to Jessica, who was helping a young girl explore a simple coding program on a tablet. And sometimes, the most important lessons about dignity come from experiencing its absence. In the weeks that followed, First Capital Bank implemented the most comprehensive anti-discrimination training program in the industry. Elijah's hoodie incident, as it became known internally, transformed into a case study on bias that every new employee encountered during orientation. More importantly, First Capital became known as the bank where everyone, regardless of appearance, received the same respectful service. Their community investment initiatives flourished, loan approval rates equalized across demographics, and profitability actually increased as new customers flocked to a bank that truly lived its values. Because in the end, dignity and respect aren't just moral principles. They're good business. And sometimes, the most powerful statement a CEO can make is simply showing up in a hoodie and demanding to be treated like everyone else. If you love this story, hit the subscribe button and share to others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.